Part 38. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xionglang Ge. Chapter 371. Xindanjiang, Valley. Li Enping's body is constantly improving its strength under the current that is enough to supply the entire continent. Electromagnetic drive is almost complete. The next step is material reorganization. If you want to compete with those demons, you must achieve material reorganization, or even the next level of power. During this period, in addition to learning various knowledge and improving electromagnetic power, Li Enping's mind incarnation has also obtained more and more information about demons from Seagram. The opponent's strength is stronger than he had expected. In front of Li Enping, a formula appeared on the screen, and the content of the formula is as follows. Psi 8, pi caret 2, m slash h caret 2, ev, psi equals 0. This is the famous wave function equation in the scientific community. It represents the volatility of matter. It is simple, beautiful, and classic. On another screen beside Li Enping, there are blocks like tables and another formula. PQ, QP equals h slash 2 pi I. That is the content of matrix mechanics, which is more inclined to the particle nature of matter. It is complex and profound, and observes the world completely in a mathematical way. Is matter a wave or a particle? This was a topic that lasted for hundreds of years in the past scientific community, but now it has been concluded that it is both a wave and a particle. Li Enping wants to be able to reorganize matter at will, and the wave-particle duality is a foundation. He can use electromagnetic force to operate molecules, atoms, and electrons on a macroscopic level, but to complete the reorganization of matter, he must enter the microscopic world. A world full of strange ideas, the world of quantum mechanics. Before being observed, the electron has always been in a superposition state, diffused throughout the space in the form of a wave function. He can appear at any position of a composite wave function. Only when I observe him will he collapse and become a point in the form of a composite wave function probability. This is one of the basic times of quantum mechanics, uncertainty. But even I cannot observe the electron's appearance before collapse. This is not a problem of observation, means it is the limitation of theory. But what is observation? Is it the so-called consciousness? When Li Enping thought about this, he felt that he had returned to the end of the material reorganization at this stage, the reorganization of consciousness, and the question of what consciousness is. At this time, the doctor in Zhongdu City had already contacted the Queen's clone over there. And the Queen's clone transmitted the information to Li Enping's brain through the mental connection. Your Majesty, can we start today's test? Li Enping did not answer, but asked, Doctor, what do you think consciousness is? Don't talk about philosophy, talk about it from a physical perspective. Consciousness. The doctor was stunned, but immediately gave his own opinion. The so-called consciousness comes from the brain. And the closest thing to the brain in this world. It may be the computer made by humans. The doctor smiled and pressed the glasses on his nose. The so-called consciousness may be to create a very complex algorithm and rules with a special structure, just like a computer, which gets different outputs based on different inputs. The reason why the human brain is different from a computer is that the algorithm of the human brain is countless times more complex, which makes it have a strong learning ability and can continuously improve its wisdom. It's like a clone. Although we can't create a brain, we can clone it. Facts have proved that clones also have consciousness. Then what do you think, if a brain is disassembled and reassembled, is it still the same person? Faced with Li Enping's question, the doctor thought about it and did not give an answer for a while. In the glass container, the clone of the Queen of Heaven moved her lips and said indifferently, Forget it, let's continue today's test. Maybe we can find the answer from the test of the mental network. The doctor nodded and began to operate the instrument beside him. The next moment, the mental force field of the clone had spread in all directions. Correspondingly, thousands of clones in Zhongdu also released their own mental force fields, covering the entire downtown of Zhongdu. Nai Xian walked out of the subway and looked at the pedestrians coming and going on the street. It seemed that everyone had a knowing smile on their faces. But he could only feel a chill in his heart. Since half a month ago, an unknown change has occurred in Zhongdu. Yes, unknown, because only Nai Xian can feel it. I don't know when there were no beggars on the road. Everyone you meet on the road greets you with a smile. In the company, from the cleaning lady to the president, everyone is working and studying hard. They are just like characters in a novel. They are kind, honest, enthusiastic, and intelligent, but the more so, the more weird it makes Nai Xian feel. Nai Xian saw with his own eyes that the liar who had cheated him of his money actually handed the money to him personally and apologized to him in tears. What made Nai Xian feel even more horrified was that everyone's mind, including his, seemed to have a lock added to it. As long as they left Zhongdu, they would completely forget the abnormalities that happened here. He tried to leave Zhongdu through the folding gate many times, but in the end he felt that he was inexplicably back again. What's wrong with this world? Nai Xian felt that he seemed to be increasingly out of tune with this world. Hi, Nai Xian, what are you thinking about? A beautiful urban white-collar worker patted Nai Xian's shoulder from behind. Well, Mary, good morning. Nai Xian looked at the mature beauty in front of him nervously. This was his boss in the company. She was originally known for her seriousness and pickiness, but now she greeted him like a big sister next door. Nai Xian, you haven't been focusing on your work recently. Is there something wrong at home? Nai Xian looked at the beautiful woman who cared about him, and his eyes accidentally glanced at the unfathomable whiteness on her chest. He muttered "Oh my God" in his heart and replied, "Nothing happened, I just didn't sleep well." Mary smiled sweetly, "It's good that you're fine. I know you live alone. If you have any difficulties, call me at any time." Seeing Mary's pretty back, Nai Xian swallowed his saliva. There is a problem, definitely a problem. Just then, a harsh voice sounded in his mind. Nai Xian rubbed his forehead and said in a deep voice, "It comes again." This is a sound that only he can hear since the mutation occurred. It is like a harsh chirping, rolling in his mind. What's more strange is that only he can hear this sound, and other people seem to have no feeling at all. Nai Xian usually endures this chirping in his mind silently, but today, somehow, his curiosity broke out. Maybe it was the need to vent the repression of many days, or maybe it was the fear of the changes in the world. Today, he decided to go in the direction of the chirping. He turned around and returned to the subway station. He felt a chill when he saw the pedestrians around him, each with a happy smile on their faces. The chirping in his brain seemed to be getting more and more intense. Nai Xian quietly walked onto the subway tracks when no one was paying attention, and walked along the tracks towards the depths of Zhongdu Underground. As he went deeper and deeper, the chirping in his brain became more and more intense. "It's getting closer, just in front." Nai Xian pressed his head, which was a little swollen and painful. "I want to see what it is." At this moment, Nai Xian walked to an iron door, which seemed to be the passage used by the maintenance personnel of the subway. When Nai Xian was hesitating about how to open this door, the iron door opened by itself. Along the curved corridor, Nai Xian walked in carefully. After about 100 meters, a huge glass container appeared in front of him. A beautiful blonde girl was immersed in the container, with her eyes closed, as if she was sleeping. Nai Xian was stunned when he saw the beautiful face of the girl. But the next moment, a stun gun hit his back directly, causing him to twitch and faint on the ground. The doctor pushed his glasses and murmured, "The mental force field seems to have no effect on him. Maybe it's a special ability." The clone in the container opened his eyes, and there was an iceberg-like expression on his beautiful face. He looked at Nai Xian on the ground. "The parameters of personality adjustment are too high. Maybe we should try to make customized adjustments according to each person's habits, and the adjustment range should not be too high. The doctor nodded and said, as long as your majesty's computing power can support it, but because of the grudges, I think the hatred coefficient cannot be cancelled abruptly, it should be reduced slowly. Readjust and carry out the next stage of testing. Strive to promote the mental network on a large scale within the month. Just as the world of the East continent was changing rapidly, the unification war of the West continent finally started the final battle. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 372. 25 days have passed since the war started in the western continent. Tyrell, crack in the ground. Located underground, in a canyon more than 2,000 meters deep. This is the headquarters of Tyrell's National Ability User Organization, Annihilation Abyss. But at this time, the cracks in the ground were completely shrouded in firelight, and various shouts of death and shelling were heard from everywhere. Swish, swish, several rays of knife light flashed by, and the wall in front of him had been cut into several pieces and fell to the ground. Bai Xing walked in with a ten-fist sword in his right hand and a wary look on his face. But in the office that originally belonged to the Supreme Commander of Annihilation Abyss, there was only a man who had been shot in the head sitting in the office. The ten-fist sword in Bai Xing's hand rested on the opponent's chin, lifting the opponent's head up. Mephisto, the other person's face looked exactly like Mephisto, the commander of the Annihilation Abyss and Tyrell's strongest fifth-level ability user. But judging from the traces at the scene, this person committed suicide. Suicide with a pistol? A level 5 ability user? Bai Xing didn't believe this kind of thing at all. He waved his hand and called in a group of staff outside the wall. Take his body out for an autopsy, analyze it, test the DNA, in short, let me know his identity. As you command, sir. Several staff members came in, started taking photos, inspecting the scene, and then moved the body out. Bai Xing also walked out and looked at the cliffs that reached deep into the canyon. From time to time, groups of fires lit up. Daxia Longke's attack on the Annihilation Abyss was so easy this time. It was so easy that Bai Xing felt something was wrong. Not only was he attacking Annihilation Abyss this time, he felt something was wrong ever since he led his army to attack Tyrell. It's not the other party's resistance, but it's too simple. Tyrell behaves like those third-rate small countries before. No, it's weaker than that. The equipment of their army is not even complete, the command is chaotic, and there are few capable people. Until now, Bai Xing has not met a fifth-level ability user. Did everyone escape? Bai Xing thought with a frown. At this moment, a dragon bird guard on the side put a communicator into his hand. Sir, this is Lord Xiaolitikang. Bai Xing took it and asked, how is the palace? The Tyrell royal family has all been captured. Xiaolitikang paused and said, but I think something's wrong. Well, Xiaolitikang looked at the royal family members who were being escorted into the transport plane one by one, and frowned. I'm afraid this is a plan for Jin Chan to escape. The real people in power in Tyrell may be hiding in the dark. It's not just that simple. Bai Xing's eyes flashed with a cold light, they also took away a lot of equipment and supplies. What do they want to do? If they want to resist, it would be better to use their own country as a base. If you give up so easily, even if you hide in the dark, you will only have infinite disadvantages. Bai Xing sneered, unless they are sure that they will lose. Regardless of the specific process of the Battle of Tyrell, one day later, the news that Tyrell was breached was announced to the world. So far, although not a single country in the entire Western continent has been destroyed. But they have all been forced to join Li Enping's Pan-Continental Alliance and accept the other party's management. The world is boiling at this moment, and the entire Earth is about to begin a new era. Li Enping sat cross-legged and floated in the valley. Electric currents penetrated the air around him, and radiated light at a frequency that was in the visible light band of humans. These lights are reflected on the ground. At one time, there were circles of light waves alternating with light and dark, and at the other time, there were densely packed groups of light spots. Li Anping has temporarily given up pursuing realistic explanations of randomness in quantum mechanics, and instead directly applies these theories. In this way, although he still cannot change the chemical properties of matter by changing the structure of atomic nuclei and electrons, he can achieve the effect of reorganizing matter simply by constraining the arrangement of atoms. Seeing the current in mid-air gradually dissipating, Li Anping stretched out his right hand. The next moment, his right hand disintegrated like a mass of mist. From skin to muscles, then nerves, and bones, everything is reduced to the most basic atomic state, diffusing into the air in a form that is difficult to distinguish with the naked eye. Li Anping raised his missing right arm. The next moment, as if something came out of nothing, the disappeared parts had been reassembled, first the bones, then nerves, muscles and other substances. After the reorganization of matter is completed, there will be a transition from electromagnetic force to strong mutual force and weak mutual force, and then there will be spin field and zero-point vacuum energy. Because Li Anping could not solve the theoretical problem of consciousness reorganization for the time being, he decided to do what he could to increase his combat effectiveness in the material reorganization stage. A second later, Li Anping's right arm had been completely restored, but there was a trace of dissatisfaction on his face. The amount of calculation and control involved in reorganizing matter through the arrangement of atoms is too complicated, and even he is still very unskilled. The right arm in front of him looks exactly the same as his previous arm. It seems that he has completely succeeded. But when he tried to exert force, he realized that his right hand could no longer move at all. This reorganization was a complete failure. Then he saw the right arm disintegrate again and then reassemble. For this kind of reassembly, Li Anping could only keep familiarizing himself with his body and the reassembly process to become proficient. While he was trying to combine these arms, Li Anping glanced at Bai Xing, Xiaolikan, Jingguang, Emma, Woody, Judy and other 6 people who were half kneeling on the ground in front of him. Have you dealt with the affairs of the Western continent? Bai Xing took his eyes off the other party's arm and said respectfully, Your Majesty, all countries in the Western continent have joined the Pan-Continental Alliance and are willing to accept our leadership in full. But although we have conquered Tyrell this time, something is wrong. Speak. This time, the whole process of attacking them was too easy. Although we found several of their level 5 ability users and the bodies of the Emperor and royal family, I think they may be clones or substitutes. The real ones are probably hiding and want to fight us in secret. The people on the side looked at Li Anping's right hand that kept disappearing and reappearing, and did not show any special expression. Only Xiaolikan, who could also control electric current, showed a trace of doubt in his eyes. He felt that there seemed to be something special in it. After hearing Bai Xing's report, Li Anping said, Tell the public that they have all been executed. You continue to be in charge of this matter and find them all. What about Violet? Bai Xing lowered his head and said, We have confiscated all their bases and companies. As for those, he couldn't think of a good way to describe Li Anping's clones, so he had to say vaguely, those clones have all been destroyed. But there is no information about the ruins of the Federal Grand Canyon in their database. However, Li Anping didn't care about his clones. After all, these clones were too different from him. In comparison, the strangeness in the ruins of the Grand Canyon made him more concerned. Can't find it? Yes, according to the person in charge, the data should be stored in the place where they can't find those data, as if someone destroyed it. But we can't find any relevant records. The specific storage device has been sent to Tianjing, and Momo is checking it personally. Got it. A blue electric light flashed on Li Anping's right hand, and his arm appeared like a projection, which had been reorganized. This time he clenched his fist and felt a strong power. The ruins of the Grand Canyon need to be investigated. And Tyrell and Violet, see if there is any connection between them. Yes, Bai Xing nodded. Xiaolikang on the side reminded, Your Majesty, there will be a Pan-Continental Alliance ceremony in 5 days. In order to celebrate the close integration of all human countries, all countries will send their highest leaders to participate. Wang Chong and others hope that you can also go to participate. Li Anping nodded and stood up from mid-air. Tell him I will go. He understood that since the entire human world has been unified, it is time to proceed with the next plan. It's just the right opportunity to meet these leaders. Perhaps, I should also tell them a little about the existence of demons and the White Land. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 373. Tianjing, in the temporary campus of Academy City, there are a lot of people coming and going today. It seems to be very busy. Because today is the headquarters of Academy City, the day when the Sky Academy takes off. Starting 2 weeks ago, all the students and teachers of the entire Academy City have gradually transported various materials to the Sky Academy. Although Fang Hejia is a graduate of this year, he can still live there for a while before graduating this year. Thinking of the various luxurious facilities in the Sky Academy, a trace of envy and jealousy appeared in his eyes. The younger students in the future are so happy. Just when Fang Hejia was thinking about this, he didn't know when the men and women around him started running quickly. Just when Fang Hejia thought something had happened, his cell phone rang. Hello, Hejia, a female voice full of energy came from the phone. Where are you? Don't you know yet? Come to the take-off ceremony quickly. What's wrong? Fang Hejia frowned and said, What's wrong with the Sky Academy? But he heard a female voice excitedly saying, Your Majesty. Your Majesty is here to attend the take-off ceremony of the Sky Academy. What? Fang Hejia was surprised, but hasn't Your Majesty been practicing at home recently? He didn't even participate in the unification war in the Western continent. The girl on the other side shouted, This time, Your Majesty was originally here to attend the summit of the highest leaders of the alliance. It was Vice President Lu Sheng who invited him to attend the take-off ceremony of the Sky Academy, by the way. As a result, he really came. Anyway, you should hurry up, otherwise there will be no front row seats if you are late. Before the other party finished speaking, Fang Hejia had hung up the phone. But when he arrived at the take-off ceremony, more than 100 seats in the front row had already been taken. The remaining students could only stand in the back row and squeeze together. Sorry, take it. Fang Hejia had no choice but to use his mind energy. Squeeze in from the back row. The students of Academy City are all people with special abilities. They are naturally unwilling to see someone trying to squeeze in with their mind energy. However, when they just wanted to fight back, they turned around and saw Fang Hejia, and their faces suddenly changed. When they were hesitating whether to give way, Fang Hejia had already walked to the front. As one of the best graduates of this year, Fang Hejia's prestige in the school is obviously not ordinary. After all, unlike ordinary schools, students in Academy City must be strong if they want to have excellent grades. Just as Fang Hejia squeezed in and smiled embarrassedly at the person who was squeezed out, a girl in the front row stood up and waved to him, shouting, Hejia, this way. Fang Hejia then squeezed and greeted again, and finally sat down. I finally got in. The short-haired girl next to him said with a smile, Brothers, I didn't even save a seat for Raphael. Thanks, Wai Wei, Fang Hejia said excitedly, I didn't expect His Majesty to come in person. He didn't come to the last opening ceremony. Wai Wei patted Fang Hejia on the shoulder, Okay, I know you are a NC fan. Don't be so excited. At this moment, the eyes of the two suddenly darkened, and the whole world suddenly turned into a dark state, and it was pitch black. No, it was not pitch black, but it was completely without light, reaching the point where human eyes could not see anything. The scene instantly sounded a chaotic sound. Fang Hejia and Wei Wei stood up back to back without saying a word. The two people's thoughts had mixed together and dispersed in all directions. The next second, Fang Hejia's body shook, and he quickly turned his head to look at the stage, even though his eyes were still dark. There was still a hint of surprise in his eyes. Apart from them, the people at the scene reacted differently. Some were panicked, some wanted to escape, some used their abilities to hide immediately, and some released light to cool down the scene. But the next moment, the light returned to everyone's eyes again, and in this short period of darkness, two men appeared on the stage. Li Anping and Lu Sheng. When they found Li Anping on the stage, the crowd immediately burst into exclamations. But before they could continue, Li Anping had already opened his mouth, and his plain voice, amplified intentionally by the air vibration, had covered everyone's voice. Just now, it was a greeting from me to you. Li Anping glanced at all the students present. I asked Lu Sheng to temporarily take away your eyesight. I want to see how you will react. When Li Anping finished the sentence, the scene had already quieted down. Just now, several students who had directly rushed out of the field, and several students who had directly drilled into the ground or hid in invisibility, all returned to the field with embarrassment. Li Anping's eyes did not look at them, but paused slightly at Fang Hejia and the other 4 students in the field. It's a pity that in the sudden attack of 2 seconds just now, only 5 of the 300 students present discovered the existence of Lu Sheng and me. To be honest, I am a little disappointed. When Li Anping finished speaking, most of the students present showed a look of shame, some did not care, and some looked a little indignant, thinking that they were just not prepared. You are ability users and students of Academy City, which means that you are the best in the entire Daxia, and even the entire Eastern continent. Most of you will join Daxia Dragon Bird after graduation. Your life experience is a golden road in the minds of others. Li Anping paused and then continued, now that the Earth is unified and the war is over, from now on I just need to study hard in Academy City and work hard in the future. I'm afraid most of you think so too, but I'm here to tell you, you're wrong. The war is far from over. Li Anping looked at everyone present and said, Academy City is the cradle of elites. Every student here has the best talents among mankind. You will only have one responsibility in the future. Is to protect human beings. And as the most elite ability users among mankind, what awaits you in the future will also be the most dangerous position. Your enemies may have all kinds of incredible abilities. Visual deprivation like today is just the most common kind. Maybe at the class reunion 10 years from now, only 1/10 of you will be able to attend. The only thing you can rely on is wisdom and hard work. I hope you can always remain vigilant and never lose your pursuit of strength. After saying this, Li Anping nodded to Yajiao Sheng on the side and handed the scene to him, while Li Anping walked towards the car surrounded by several Dragon Bird guards. In the next few days starting today, he will also attend the Pan-Continental Alliance's Top Leaders Summit to prepare for the next development of the entire human world on Earth. Set a tone. The students present spontaneously applauded and watched Li Anping leave. Many students even took out their mobile phones and started taking photos of where Li Anping was. Today, Li Anping's speech at the Sky Academy was posted on major websites and media, causing widespread discussion. Some people disagree, and some think Li Anping has done a good job, but only a small number of people have noticed the war Li Anping mentioned. He also thought of the human monsters who caused chaos in the Western continent before, and had a bad premonition in his heart. On the night when the Sky Academy took off, in the mountains of southern Daxia, a young man from a mountain village was sitting at home, constantly looking at the newspaper in his hand. The content in the newspaper is exactly what happened in Academy City today, as well as the Alliance's summit meeting. The boy's father came in carrying a pole and looked at the boy's serious look. He said casually, "Zining, where are you reading the newspaper? Has something big happened recently?" A young man named Su Zining raised his head and said excitedly, "The academy in the sky has taken off, and the emperor even went to give a speech." Aerial Academy? Is it the school that can fly in the sky? My father thought for a while, with a look of surprise on his face. It can fly. It has only been built for more than a year, right? That's not true, Su Zining said proudly. I heard that the emperor personally took action and greatly shortened the time. Just as the father and son were talking about national affairs, Su Zining's mother came out of the kitchen, holding bowls and chopsticks and said, "Okay, okay, go help me serve the food. If you have anything to do, eat first." There were only 2 people there. Little boys and girls aged 8 or 9 also followed their mother and brought out the meals from the kitchen. Su Zining and his son also stepped forward to help. After setting up a table, with a total of 3 dishes, 1 soup and a large pot of rice, the family's dinner began. While eating, the 3 children talked about what happened at school today. The 2 parents talked about things in the village. This was the only time the family could communicate every day. Su Zining's sister said, Eden said that his brother went to the Emerald City to take the exam last week and was admitted to the school for special abilities. He even came to the school today to give us candies. When she heard her sister's words, Su Zining's face darkened. Her father at the side directly gave her a large piece of chopsticks and said, "You can't stop your mouth after eating so much." My sister secretly glanced at Su Zining's face, and then she reacted. She didn't say anything more, and just kept lowering her head to eat. His older brother, Su Zining, has always been the best in school. He also went to Emerald City 2 months ago to take the entrance exam for a school for special abilities, but was told that he was incompetent and would not be admitted. The Academy of Special Functions in Emerald City was run by the 9 royal families and was one of only 10 academies in Daxia. Their test results have basically sentenced Su Zining to death for having superpowers. Looking at her son's ugly face, the mother comforted her, "It's okay. It's okay if you don't have superpowers. When you graduate from high school and go to college, look at Avi from the neighboring village. Isn't he still doing well? I heard that his monthly salary is it's all over 10,000. Seeing her parents comforting her together, and thinking about what she read in today's newspaper, Su Zining raised her head, looked at her father with determination and said, "Dad, I want to go to Tianjin." In an instant, the entire dining table fell silent. Father put down the bowl and chopsticks, frowned and said, "Why did you want to go to Tianjin?" "I read the newspaper today. The newspaper said that Academy City has opened a major that specializes in teaching ancient abilities. The registration requirements are as long as you meet the qualification test, and you don't need to be an ability person." As he spoke, Su Zining lowered his head, "I want to try it again." After hearing what her son said, the mother first expressed her objection, "Big boy, our family are ordinary people. As long as you live a peaceful life, I will be relieved. It doesn't matter if you don't have the ability." Su Zining raised her head and said excitedly, "I want to try again, I think it might work." "Why are you so disobedient?" The mother wanted to persuade her again, but the father coughed and said, "Okay, Zining, after the failure of the test in Emerald City, I knew that you still didn't give up. If you want to go, you can." He waved his hand to stop the mother, who was about to say something, looked at Su Zining and said, "But if you fail again this time, don't waste time trying again, come back and study hard." Yes, Su Zining nodded heavily, but his 2 fists under the table were clenched white. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 374. Let's end the issue of Guan Sai Ket. In the conference room, Wang Chong looked at the more than 300 representatives from all over the world, representing more than 150 countries, and said, about the demarcation of borders, just based on the results of the discussion just now. He looked up at Li Anping's position, and when he saw the other person nodded, he continued, the next question is about the distribution of ability users around the world. Although the entire world is now under the rule of Li Anping, there are still many problems and conflicts between various countries and regions, and they all need to be adjudicated one by one. However, due to Li Anping's absolute force of suppression, similar issues were resolved by the Daxia government. As time goes by, the alliance will gradually reduce the influence of various governments, allowing them to completely become part of the alliance and Li Anping's tentacles in every corner of the world. This is even more true when it comes to people with abilities. As an important combat force in the human world, from now on all ability users around the world must register their information with the alliance, and accept the alliance's work assignments on the premise of soliciting their own wishes. As for the strategy of schools for ability users, we will first learn from Daxia's current methods. Each country can open 1 or 2 schools for ability users, responsible for training ability users. As for Daxia's 10 ability schools, they will also expand their enrollment to the entire world. As for the graduates of various schools, in addition to the government, the army, and the police, those with strong practical capabilities will have 2 choices, the Daxia Lonke in the eastern continent, and the Imaginary Number Agency in the western continent. By Bai Xing and Judy Eno respectively. And Yajio Shen, who was originally in charge of Daxia Dragon Bird, will become the general chairman of Daxia's top 10 superpower joint schools after being asked by Li Anping. Because of Li Anping's full support, these 10 campuses will probably become the top schools for espers in the entire human world, and Academy City will be the top of the top. In addition, Li Anping also decided to establish a force of ability users specifically to cooperate with the army, called the Human Armed Force, led by Xia Litikang. Compared to the Imaginary Number Agency and Daxia Lonke, they will be more inclined to work as a team to fight against the Legion and prepare for the future battle between humans and demons. Of course, there are many issues that need to be unified for the entire human race, such as economy, law, ethnicity. There are so many things that need to be considered. Naturally, Li Anping does not intend to waste all his time on this. He just sets a rough strategy. It is required that the original conditions of those countries be respected with as much uniformity as possible. As for the rest, it was naturally done by the civil servants. After the meeting lasted until 9 o'clock in the evening, a man suddenly walked up to Wang Chong and said something in his ear. His expression changed, and he looked at the sleepy people in the audience and said, "Everyone, we will continue to discuss the remaining issues tomorrow, and His Majesty will give us a few words." Wang Chong's words immediately woke everyone up from their sleepiness. Amid applause, Li Anping slowly walked onto the stage. Everyone is staring at the strongest man on the stage, the unprecedented emperor. They thought about what the other person would say. Could it be related to what Li Anping said in Academy City this morning? Everyone, what I am going to say next may be related to the life and death of mankind. Li Anping clapped his hands, and the next moment, a holographic image was displayed behind him, showing Li Anping in Xindanjiang and Hui pictures and information of the battle, as well as video of Li Anping's battle with Seagram in the western continent. Although most of the people here have heard about these 2 battles, this is the first time they have seen such comprehensive information. As you can see, I have fought against this inhuman creature twice in the past 2 years. This kind of creature calls itself a demon and was born in a universe called the White Earth. They can reach other universes through something called a world-penetrating gate. Video footage of Seagram destroying an entire city with a wave of his hand appears in front of everyone's eyes. And now, they've discovered Earth. I captured this demon named Seagram and got it from his mouth. I can be sure that the next wave of the demon's offensive will happen within 12 to 18 months. This is what I said last month. We know the news, which means that in up to 17 months, we will face these demons. Li Anping's words obviously shocked everyone present, but he had already planned to tell most of the things about the devil in order to unite the power of the entire human race. Under his absolute force, the entire human world has been unified, and the current crisis of the demon clan can not only divert the internal conflicts after the unification of the human world, but also effectively unite them, allowing humans to break out stronger under the crisis. Power. This demon named Seagram has the ability of the 7th level. Li Anping pointed to the picture of Seagram behind him and said, "Yes, you heard it right, the devil divides the ability into 10 levels. Seagram, who has level 7 abilities, if I were removed, he alone would be enough to exterminate the entire human race. In the White Land, there are many more powerful demons than him. The 12 strongest among them are called the 12 demon gods, and they are all creatures that have reached the 9th energy level. Fortunately, there are only 7 of them left." A black representative stood up and looked at Li Anping. Although he was a little scared and nervous, he still said, "Your Majesty, I don't doubt you, but how do we know that this so-called demon, Seagram, is telling the truth?" "You are right." Under Li Anping's operation, the holographic projection behind him changed rapidly, and a lot of information about Hui was displayed. Above everyone's head was a full 3D projection of Hui, and above Hui was the whole scene of Xindanjiang. The name of this behemoth is Hui, known as the world-destroying beast. It is one of the 12 exiled demons, but the one in Xindanjiang is only a small part of his body. But just this small part has formed a human country, Dongyang. With Li Anping's operation, the holographic image of Hui was pulled closer at high speed. People seemed to have landed from the sky on Hui's epidermis, and then his various organs, as well as various monsters in his epidermis and organs. This is a 3D model of Gray's body structure made by the Royal Academy of Sciences. As you can see, his body is not only huge, but also contains enough energy to destroy the entire Earth. If any of the parasites on his body were to flow into human society uncontrollably, it would cause a huge disaster. They are now in Xindanjiang. If you need evidence, you can go and see it at any time. Do you think these creatures should have existed on Earth?" The people in the audience looked at the holographic images in front of them, as well as various text reports about Gray. Their faces were full of disbelief. Whether it was the devil, Gray, or Seagram, their true existence had completely exceeded the common sense of these people. Although there were still some doubts, looking at the information in front of them, most of them believed it in their hearts. This is also related to Li Anping's current absolute force and absolute power. How could this be? It's incredible that there are such creatures. How strong are those demons? How should we deal with them? What about the so-called 9th energy level? Can we humans reach it? If Li Anping did not unify the human world, but called all the leaders of all countries, let's not discuss whether he could call them. Even if they all came, whether to believe or not is one problem, and how to lead in the future. Who listens to whom is another bigger problem. It will never be as easy as Li Anping is now. Everyone, the crisis of mankind is imminent, and I need you to mobilize all your strength. Li Anping's eyes were like 1,000 pounds. No one dared to look at him at a glance, and the noise was completely suppressed. In at most 17 months, the worst case may be that the 8th energy level demon will appear on the Earth. So from now on, although ordinary people don't know, but we will enter a complete wartime state. Everything is for mankind. Li Anping's words obviously set off an uproar in the hearts of everyone. The content of the summit meeting will probably change completely. This is also a time point that Li Anping specially chose. The topics discussed before the announcement of the demon today are all important and related to the most basic issues of each country. Li Anping looked at the topics that followed, and they were not particularly urgent. They could completely give way to war. So Li Anping chose to let them discuss it first, and after the discussion, he would directly start preparing to deal with the demon. After seeing Li Enping finish speaking, the people in the audience obviously had a lot of questions to ask. Judy Eno was the first to stand up and ask the question that all the level 5 ability users present wanted to know. Your Majesty, I would like to ask, what kind of power do the so-called level 8 and level 9 have? So Li Enping told him what Seagram told him, and then added, Seagram doesn't know much about the information of the level 9. As for the level 8, the destructive power, speed, and other aspects will be different according to the different abilities, but from my understanding, regarding their immortal nature, I am afraid that with the current technological means of mankind, they cannot be killed. I will send you the specific information later. Claudia, who represented Ice Castle to attend the meeting, stood up. At this time, she was wearing a black suit and her long pink hair was tied up. Compared with before, she had a more capable and strong woman flavor. Your Majesty, can't the gate be destroyed? Li Enping shook his head. No, the gate is a unique product of the White Earth. It is like gravity. There is no option to destroy it. Unless I can modify the parameters of the universe one day, I will never be able to close it. Your Majesty, a white man stood up. Is there no possibility of peaceful coexistence? The race of demons should be able to communicate, right? Li Enping glanced at him and said word by word, there is absolutely no such possibility. The White Earth has many gates, and they can reach not only our Earth. They have also encountered humans in other worlds. And humans are like food to demons. And for many demons, humans have the function of enhancing their strength, just like the human monsters that appeared in the Codex Kingdom and the Federation. So I reiterate that there is absolutely no possibility of compromise between humans and demons, and the option of surrender does not exist at all. Li Enping glanced coldly at the people in the audience, and then began to answer another person's question. Time passed quietly in this question and answer, and as the representatives received the information about demons written by Li Enping one by one, and Li Enping answered one by one. Everyone felt the severity of the situation. However, the demon was not in front of them, so although most of them felt the crisis, they did not feel that it was imminent and urgent. Li Enping also required that the relevant information could only be known by those present, all level 5 ability people, and the top leaders of all countries. The news about demons is not open to everyone for the time being. From this night, whether they know it or not, the entire human society is like a fully wound engine, starting to work hard to fight against the unprecedented crisis. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 375. Half a month after the summit, on the frozen ocean in the north of Codex country. The originally sunny weather suddenly changed, and dark clouds shrouded the sky, seemingly ready to fall at any time. There was a unique heavy feeling in the air, a feeling of an approaching storm. A small fishing boat was drifting on the dark ocean. The crew on the boat looked nervously at the increasingly dark sea outside the window and the increasing wind and waves. Damn, why did the storm suddenly start? It was fine just now. This won't work. We can't escape anymore, we have to fight hard. Just as the crew members were expressing concern in twos and threes, a huge wind wave hit the hull, shaking the entire ship. The water droplets falling from the sky hit the deck of the small fishing boat like a waterfall, making a crackling explosion. Ring. The storm has begun. Everyone go back to the cabin. As soon as the captain shouted these words, the violent rain poured into his mouth. In the wrath of the sea, the small fishing boat was completely unable to fight back. The crew could only hide in the cabin and quietly wait for nature's judgment on them. In the cabin, some crew members prayed, "Lord, please forgive us." Some crew members began to complain about the captain, "I told you not to come. If the captain hadn't insisted on sailing, how would we have encountered this kind of thing?" More people, with pale faces, sat nervously in the cabin that was constantly being shaken wildly by the storm, silently. At this moment, another huge wave hit the hull of the ship, making a loud roar and a low hissing sound. As if it was about to be pinched off at any time, the hull of the ship was not overturned after all, and landed steadily on the sea. Just as all the crew members breathed a sigh of relief, another wave hit the boat, and the huge force directly overturned the fishing boat mercilessly. The entire hull of the ship hit the bottom of the sea upside down and continued to sink towards the bottom of the water. Ah! Help! I don't want to die. Sea water poured into the cabin, rushing the crew together like sardines. Just when they began to struggle in panic and despair, they thought they were certain to die. There was a soft banging sound from the bottom of the boat, and then I saw the small fishing boat that had sunk under the sea. Under the action of a thrust, it slowly emerged from the sea. The crew members rushed to the deck as if they had been reborn, breathing in the fresh air. Then he looked at the sky around him at a loss. The entire fishing boat was flying higher and higher into the sky. Oh my God! We're flying! At the bottom of the fishing boat, the incarnation of black mental energy raised the entire fishing boat with both hands, rising towards the sky. I saw the fishing boat breaking through the dark clouds all the way. Until tens of thousands of meters in the sky, a huge aerial fortress appeared in front of everyone. That is the war fortress built by the Federation, the city in the sky. Ignoring the exclamations on the fishing boat, Li Anping transported the small fishing boat in through the apron passage under the Sky City. Soon after, it flew out again and plunged into the sea tens of thousands of meters below. Since the summit meeting half a month ago, the entire human society has been driven by Li Anping. Jump gates have been installed in every city. The controllable nuclear fusion reactor also sent sufficient energy to the entire Western continent. After the unification of the world, as a research institution directly under Li Anping, the Royal Academy of Sciences also received more sufficient resources. The best scientists from various countries were summoned to New Dongyang, where they will continue to digest the technology obtained from the God King. And even developed more war weapons based on this. And now the Sky City has come to the frozen ocean in the northern part of the Codex country in order to create an undersea base near the boundary crossing gate deep under the sea. Because once the devil arrives, this is the first line of defense against them, and it is also the base to monitor the situation of the boundary crossing gate. In the middle of a violent storm, the incarnation of thought energy made a bang, and it had already brought up a wave and dived under the sea surface. Compared to the violent sea, it looks much calmer under the sea. In the blink of an eye, Li Anping had dived more than 100 meters. The storm on the sea had no impact on this place at all. Colorful fish swam freely in front of him. The incarnation of mind energy suddenly began to dive again. As Li Anping continued to dive, the sunlight could no longer reach the sea at this depth, and the surrounding area began to gradually become dim. Then he dived, and the surrounding creatures gradually disappeared. As he dived deeper, the water pressure became higher and higher, making it no longer possible for ordinary creatures to survive. When Li Anping reached 10,000 meters under the sea, he could no longer see any fish creatures around him. There was nothing in this dark seabed. Human eyes could not feel any light source and could not see anything. Only the terrifying silence fills the boundless darkness. Loneliness, darkness, and despair, this is what the depths of the sea feel like. If instead of Li Anping, someone else appeared here, even if he had the power to incarnate mind energy, he would probably be tortured crazy by the darkness and loneliness in front of him. In this silent silence, a dark shadow rushed towards Li Anping. The black shadow was like a giant deep-sea beast, with a huge body more than 300 meters long, and it slammed into Li Anping, who was motionless on the seabed. With a rumble, the shadow hit Li Anping, and then rolled towards Li Anping like a snake. If there was a searchlight at this time, you could see that the shadow in front of you was a huge snake covered with white scales all over its body, and its body was almost as thick as an ordinary building. As for the specific size, just think about those buildings more than 100 stories high. Li Enping was naturally not afraid of a sea monster of this size. He just patted the sea monster's body and said, "Okay, stop making trouble." As if it understood what Li Enping meant, the sea monster flicked its tail and continued to dive into the depths of the seabed with Li Enping. This sea monster is actually a monster from Xindanjiang. This time, Li Enping also brought him here for the construction of the frozen ocean seabed base. This giant monster that is enough to dominate the entire underwater world becomes as obedient as a puppy when facing Li Enping. In a blink of an eye, the man and the monster had dived more than 2,000 meters again. The originally dark underwater world suddenly lit up with dots of lights. The seabed, which should have been empty, filled with darkness and silence, is now filled with various engineering machinery and dozens of huge searchlights, illuminating the entire seabed as if it were daytime. The giant snake sea monster has swam away again and patrolled the nearby deep sea. Li Enping looked at the construction site in front of him. The yellow engineering robots were busy like bees. These engineering robots are the latest underwater scouts developed by the Royal Academy of Sciences. They are made of newly developed alloy steel and can theoretically work at a depth of 50,000 meters underwater. The first experiment has been successful at a depth of 20,000 meters under the sea. These engineering robots, equipped with particle weapons and capable of running at a speed of 30 knots in the water, are remotely operated by humans. Now, they are responsible for the construction of the underwater base. In the center of the large construction site, the blue boundary gate floats quietly on the seabed. The Sky City in the air is responsible for supporting the construction team on the sea surface. As for Li Enping's mind incarnation, he will always be responsible for staying around the gate. First, he helps build the submarine base, and second, he is the only one on the entire Earth who is most suitable to guard here. After all, ordinary people with abilities are useless here against the demons. Among the more powerful level 5 people with abilities, it seems that there are no suitable people for fighting on the seabed. Moreover, Li Enping also found that the mind incarnation has a lot of advantages in fighting on the seabed. The abundant hydrogen atoms and oxygen atoms here can greatly enhance his combat effectiveness. Once the battle is out of control, he can also get rid of the enemy by returning to Li Enping. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 376. Tianjin, the Folding Center. Su Xinying walked out of the folding hall that marked the Emerald City, with a bulging backpack on his back, which was full of food prepared by his mother. Su Xinying suddenly looked up as if he had a feeling, and saw the back of a long-haired girl flashing in front of him, but when he looked carefully again, the long-haired girl had merged into the crowd and disappeared. Although Su Xinying felt a little strange in his heart, he didn't pay much attention. He turned his head and looked at the bustling crowd in front of him. He swallowed his saliva. This was the first time he saw so many people, all kinds of skin colors, all kinds of nationalities, all kinds of dresses, and all kinds of ages. There are really so many people in Tianjin. He patted his face, "Don't embarrass yourself." Then he walked towards the underground floor under the guidance of the surrounding signs. There is a subway leading to every corner of Tianjin. Because of the vigorous promotion of the folding door, its cheap and efficient characteristics quickly conquered everyone. Under the pressure of the folding gate, all planes, trains, and shipping in the west and east continents have been basically closed. Only some trains, planes, and ships used for sightseeing and tourism are left. The large number of people brought by this has gradually overwhelmed the folding center in Tianjin, but the other 3 folding centers planned are already being built. One is located at the other end of Tianjin, and 2 more are built in the Federation of the West Continent. The entire human world is infinitely reduced. So now what is presented in front of Su Xinying is an unprecedented sea of people. Sorry, sorry. Excuse me. Carrying a huge package, Su Ziniang could only slowly squeeze towards the subway platform amid constant apologies and complaints from the crowd. When he finally got to the back of the team, he couldn't help but sigh, there are so many people. At this time, there was a cry of surprise from the front of the subway platform. Su Ziniang looked up with some surprise and saw an old man with white hair rushing into the subway track, shouting something loudly, but because there were too many noisy sounds around, I couldn't hear it at all. However, when Su Ziniang saw this scene, her whole body had already rushed over involuntarily, and the huge package kept hitting the crowd, causing a series of curses. But Su Ziniang couldn't care less, the subway horn had already reached the platform, and when he jumped into the track, when he grabbed the old man's shoulder, the light from the front of the train had already shone on the platform. Go, Su Ziniang wanted to save the old man, but the old man struggled and shouted, "Don't bother me, let me die. Let me die. I want the whole world to know that my son can't die in vain." After all, Su Ziniang was young and strong. After a lot of dragging, he still dragged the old man to the platform, but the old man struggled more and more fiercely, and even opened his mouth to bite Su Ziniang's arm. But before she could bite Su Ziniang, a huge palm had already cut the old man's neck, knocking him unconscious. It turned out that a white man who was more than 2 meters tall also jumped off the platform and knocked the old man unconscious. He and Su Ziniang immediately carried the other person onto the platform. Just after they jumped onto the platform, the train that had already entered the station slowly stopped only a dozen meters away from them. Instantly, applause rang out on the entire platform. Well done. Beautiful. Su Ziniang wiped the sweat from his forehead and exhaled a breath. Although he didn't hesitate at all when saving people, he felt very scared when he thought about it now. Are you okay? The white man who saved people with Su Ziniang patted his shoulder and said in Daxia language, "You are very good. My name is Jason." My name is Su Ziniang." Su Ziniang didn't expect that the white guy in front of him actually spoke fluent Daxia language. He only had time to look at the other person at this time. The white man named Jason in front of him was not only tall, but also very muscular. Although he was wearing clothes, his thick chest was like a wall, giving people a strong sense of oppression. Just as the two were introducing themselves, a man in uniform walked up to them. "Excuse me, I'm a subway staff member. Can I trouble you to go to the office with me?" Seeing the two people turning their eyes, he immediately explained, "Don't worry, I just want to leave your contact information and ask about your situation at the time." 10 minutes later, in the subway office, Su Ziniang nodded and said, "That's the basic situation. I don't know the old man." He looked at the staff in front of him taking notes, and finally couldn't help asking, "Excuse me, how is the old man now? Why did he commit suicide?" The staff looked at the two hesitantly, sighed and said, "Forget it, I won't tell you anyway, you can see it in the newspaper the next day. The unification war of the Western continent, you know." Seeing the two nodded, he continued, "Although the military has tried to end the war as quickly as possible, there are still a lot of people who died. The old man just now, his son seems to be a soldier of a country in the Western continent. This is also one of the series of reactions brought about by the jump gate. The speed of the flow of various information, people, and materials has greatly increased, which has also brought about a series of social effects, all of which need to be solved bit by high-level government officials." Seeing that the atmosphere was a bit dull, the staff member looked at the backpacks on the two people's backs and suddenly said, "You two are here to take the entrance exam for Academy City, right?" Su Ziniang blushed, lowered her head and said with embarrassment, "Well, although I don't have the ability, I heard that Academy City has opened an ancient class for the incompetent this time, so I want to give it a try." The big white man named Jason also nodded, "I don't know if I have the ability." I originally planned to participate in the martial arts competition in more than 2 months, but I heard that Academy City is now recruiting people without abilities. Just want to try it?" After hearing the two people's answers, the staff member smiled. Apparently the two people's desperate actions to save people won his favor. He smiled and said, "Academy City is very difficult to enter, although now every month there will always be an entrance test, but I heard that the pass rate for each entrance test is no more than 1%, that is, only one person out of 100 can get in. This is still the pass rate for those with ability. This time they recruit people without ability. If so, I'm afraid the pass rate will be even lower." After hearing what he said, both Jason and Su Xinying showed worried looks on their faces in the face of such a strict passing rate. The staff member continued, "But if you don't pass the exam, don't take it too seriously. After all, if you want to enter that kind of exam, you must have unique qualifications, plus one more a little luck. If you can't pass the exam, there is also a Life Science and Technology College in Tianjin, which is also a superpower college. You can try it. In addition, if you are sure that you are not capable, you can go to Kikan in Bio through the jump gate, where there are many esoteric martial arts schools. Nowadays, many young people who have been tested as incompetent have gone there to practice ancient abilities." Hearing this statement, Su Xinying's expression did not change, but Jason's eyes lit up. He came to Daxia originally to pursue stronger power. If he couldn't get into Academy City, Bio was indeed a good place to go. Moreover, he has been practicing black boxing in the Federation in the past and has practiced fighting skills for many years. He believes that if he cultivates ancient abilities, he will have some advantages. A few minutes later, the two of them walked out of the subway office together. Jason looked at Su Xinying and said, "Since you are also taking the exam, let's go together. But after all, we are also competitors." Su Xinying scratched her head and said with a smile, "I'm just an ordinary high school student. Brother Jason, you are much better than me at first glance. The success rate is also much higher than mine." "That's not necessarily the case." Jason shook his head, and the two of them immediately rushed towards Academy City's branch in Tianjin together. After all, now that the Sky Academy has taken off, if ordinary people want to find Academy City, they can only go to their office in Tianjin. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 377. After leaving the subway office, Jason and Su Xinying first found the Academy City office in Tianjin and signed up for the entrance test. However, the specific test will not officially start until 3 days later. As for what the test is, we will know when the time comes. The two looked at the long queue at the registration office, smiled bitterly at each other, and were not very confident about whether they could successfully enroll. So after registering, they went directly to find a hotel together. When they walked to the door of a hotel, Su Xinying seemed to feel something again, and suddenly turned his head, and saw a long-haired woman just turning the corner, leaving him with an infinitely beautiful back, and then disappeared. Jason slapped Su Xinying on the shoulder and asked, "What are you looking at?" "That one over there." After thinking for a while, Su Xinying shook his head and said, "Nothing, let's go in." The two walked to the front desk of the hotel and asked, "Boss, can we get 2 rooms?" "No, there's only one king-size bedroom." "I think you two should squeeze in." A middle-aged man at the front desk looked up at the two of them, yawned and said, "You are here to take the entrance exam, right? This is the first time that Academy City recruits people with no abilities. There are at least 300,000 or 400,000 candidates in Tianjin. There will be more in the next 3 days. The surrounding hotels are already full." While he was talking, another young man carrying a big box walked in from outside. After seeing this, Jason took the money and slapped the boss in front of him, "We want the room, 10 days. Su Xinying wanted to persuade him, thinking that the booking time was too long. However, Jason had been fighting black boxing for several years and was still rich, so he didn't care about the accommodation fee. The boss took the money with a smile, and then handed over a booklet with an enthusiastic look. "This is exclusively sold in our store. It is about the exam materials of Academy City. Would you like to buy one?" Su Zheniying's eyes lit up, and he grabbed it. It said, 100 questions for Academy City interviews. Ancient system abilities, let us defeat geniuses through hard work. The basic knowledge of superpowers compiled by experts, no longer afraid of entrance exams. Superpowers from nothing. Let you become a superpower user in 5 days. Jason also glanced at it and found that the title on the cover alone was scary enough. It was a booklet that was made up and used to cheat money. However, seeing Su Zheniying's eyes shining, he shook his head and sighed. He did not stop the other party from buying it. As soon as they entered the room, the two of them sorted it out a little. Su Zheniying kept flipping through the booklet with shining eyes, while Jason lay on the bed and turned on the TV to watch. Whether it was Su Zheniying or Jason, both of them grew up in hardship, so they didn't mind sharing a room or a bed. Jason turned on the TV, which was playing the news. Today, the West Folding Center in Tianjin has officially broken ground. In order to accommodate more and more tourists from all over the world, the West Folding Center will be larger than the old Folding Center, which is now the East Folding Center. It is expected that after completion, it will have more than 4,000 folding halls and can receive 300,000 to 400 million passengers every day. It is worth noting that the construction of the West Folding Center this time will use the latest Dragon-type engineering robots developed by the Royal Academy of Sciences, and cooperate with the ability users to build the folding center. Today, in the city of Ula in the south of the Federation, the first Prophet satellite was successfully launched. The Prophet satellite uses the latest technology of the Federation, will fully monitor various natural disasters and criminal activities, and is connected to the World Police Network. It can effectively prevent criminal activities everywhere. According to Jim Parsons, a spokesman for the Federal Aviation Administration, in the next 3 months, the Pan-Continental Alliance will launch more than 30 Prophet satellites worldwide to cover the world with disaster and crime monitoring networks. Jason glanced at the news for a few times, but there was nothing that interested him. He turned the channel again and saw a movie being broadcast. The film is called The Rebel, and it tells the story of an alien invasion. A teenager from Daxia has his parents killed by aliens, then awakens his abilities, joins the army, and then becomes stronger and stronger. Finally, with the help of his companions, he fights off the aliens. Speaking of which, since Li Anping came out of nowhere, the blockbusters about people with abilities have been selling well in recent years. It is said that when this movie was filmed last year, several members of the Daxia Dragon Bird team were invited to guest star, and the box office was very hot. Compared with the boring news, Jason was enjoying the hot blockbuster in front of him. Damn, how did it end? Jason, who was watching with relish, suddenly cursed. It turned out that the boy fought off the aliens and was about to lead the Earth army to counterattack the aliens' home planet when the film ended. He turned his head and found that Su Zheniying was still reading the booklet in his hand tirelessly, so he smiled and asked, "How is it, what did you gain?" Su Zheniying raised his head and stared at Jason with red eyes, which scared him. "So that's how it is, so that's how it is," he said to Jason excitedly. "Brother Jason, do you know? It turns out that Bai Zheng, the current leader of Daxia Longke, was the emperor of the Shang dynasty more than 2,000 years ago. He froze himself in order to achieve immortality. He was not a person with special abilities when he was young, but the reason why he became so powerful was because he found a secret book under the cushion when he was cleaning the ancestral hall of his family, and then practiced a secret martial art called the Supreme Emperor's Kung Fu. Look." As he said this, he handed over the booklet. Jason glanced at it dumbfounded. It was full of messy human-shaped balls, followed by 5 big red characters, Supreme Emperor Kung Fu. He stood up and patted Jason on the shoulder, but seeing the eager look on his face, he finally sighed and said, "Just take a look at this." After saying that, he shook his head and walked out the door. "I'm going to have some dinner. Do you want me to bring anything?" Su Zheniying lowered her head, stared at the booklet in her hand, and said without looking back, "No, there is food in my package." 8 o'clock in the evening, Tianjin University, the 13th floor of the Imperial Library. Li Anping was floating in mid-air, and around him, dozens of books were facing him. It was like rings spinning around him. Dozens of books were being turned over by the void field one after another, as if he was turning the pages for Li Anping to read. Most of these books are very thick, and the contents on the cover are such as the foundation of quantum mechanics, the new quantum world, and ghosts in atoms. The history of elementary particle physics and other content related to quantum science. In recent days, Li Anping has been staying in Tianjin. As for Xindan Jiang, he has completed the electromagnetic drive and no longer needs to be charged through the nuclear reactor. It was left to the Royal Academy of Sciences. During this period of time, Li Anping has basically completed the reorganization of materials except the brain. Some of the contents are being optimized and supplemented, as well as the strong interaction force, weak interaction force, etc., as well as the consciousness issues that Li Anping has always had no clue about. I saw only one of his hands, and a handful of air molecules had been caught in his hands. The so-called electromagnetic force means that like objects repel each other and opposite characters attract each other. According to quantum electrodynamics, its essence is the result of the constant exchange of photons between two particles. All interactions between particles in the world, from the collision of electrons, to the physical work of human beings, are nothing but the effect of this electromagnetic force. But when it comes to the inside of the nucleus, it's about the strong interaction and the weak interaction. The former attracts protons and neutrons in the nucleus together, and the latter causes so-called decay. Coupled with the force of gravity, these 4 forces are the only 4 forces in the entire universe. Thinking of this, Li Anping's palm suddenly changed, and the air molecules in his hands began to change into various colors. According to the existing theory, the electromagnetic force is the exchange of photons, the exchange of mesons of the strong mutual force, and the weak mutual force is the exchange of bosons. Their essences are the same. They are all the same force. So, I saw only the colorful air in Li Anping's hand. After a burst of blue electric light, a ball of flesh began to form directly, and then the thumb-sized ball of flesh continued to change and grow. He was changing the chemical properties of atoms, on the basis of reorganizing matter. Change the nature of matter. A few seconds later, like a puzzle piece, eyes, a nose, and a tail appeared on the meatball. A snow-white little mouse appeared in front of him. This mouse had a heartbeat and blood flowing. Look. It looks just like a real mouse. But Li Anping looked at the motionless mouse in his palm and showed a disappointed look. No consciousness, why? How is this different from cloning? What exactly is the so-called consciousness and soul? If I don't complete this step, I won't be able to truly reorganize myself, complete the reorganization of consciousness, and enter the next stage. Following electromagnetic drive and material reorganization, the third stage of Li Anping's plan is what he calls quantum computing. At this moment, a series of footsteps, breathing and heartbeats reached Li Anping's ears. He waved his palm gently, and the mouse in his hand turned into a row of bubbles and dissipated in the air. 10 minutes later, Xia Yunyun opened the door to the reading room and walked in. He saw Li Anping still floating in the air, surrounded by dozens of books whose pages were constantly turning automatically. "Brother Li, I have something to ask you." Xia Yunyun looked at Li Anping reading and said sweetly. Li Anping turned around and landed on the ground. The books around him closed themselves as if they were controlled by hands from a distance, and then flew back to the bookshelves. What happened? Xia Yunyun walked up to Li Anping and held out his hand. The parasitic creature on my body is called black liquid. I have been asking Shi Wen and others to study this thing at the Royal Academy of Sciences recently, but I heard that you have been thinking about consciousness and soul recently. Question, let you look at this, maybe it will help. Li Anping did ask about matters related to the Royal Academy of Sciences recently, but Li Anping himself has the ability to absorb souls, and has not been able to thoroughly study this thing until now, so the Royal Academy of Sciences naturally cannot help. However, when Xia Yunyun heard Shi Wen talk about this matter, she wanted to help Li Anping, or in other words, find an excuse to get close to him. Following Xia Yunyun's words, a ball of black mucus emerged from her palm. It didn't look like a living thing at all, but it swayed left and right and made a roaring sound, like a little lion. Oh, Li Anping's eyes suddenly focused on Xia Yunyun's palm. If I take away some of this black liquid, will it affect you? It's okay. Xia Yunyun shook her head. Seeing Li Anping staring at her so closely, she said with a slightly flushed face, just take as much as you want. Not a lot, a little is enough. Li Anping stretched out his right hand. Before the black liquid and Xia Yunyun could react, only a flash of lightning could be seen. The black liquid on Xia Yunyun's palm had lost a thumb-sized part and fell into Li Anping's hand. The black liquid that was cut off immediately grew back, but the roaring sound became louder, and the small ball of black liquid in Li Anping's palm also roared with its teeth and claws, as if it had turned from one into two. Interesting. Is it group consciousness, or what reason? The mental force field kept scanning the black liquid in front of him, but Li Anping still raised his head first and said to Xia Yunyun, "Thank you." Xia Yunyun said happily, "It's okay, as long as it is useful to Brother Li." Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 378. At night, Su Zheniying stood on the rooftop of the hotel. Looking at the night view of Tianjin and the busy streets, he sighed quietly, feeling that the prosperity of the city did not belong to him. Because many of the contents in the booklet he bought were too shocking, he excitedly ran to talk to the hotel owner, but was stopped by Jason, who told him that more than 99% of the contents in this booklet were fabricated, and the more explosive they were, the better. Just take a look as a pastime. Brother Jason, do you think we can pass the test? Jason raised the beer bottle in his hand and took a sip, and said casually, I want to join the Academy City just to pursue more powerful power. If I can't get in, I plan to try my luck in Baiyu. But I have learned Daxia language in the past year. If I go there, I have to learn Baiyu language again. Brother Jason, you are really amazing. You can learn Daxia language in a short time here. Su Zheniying suddenly raised his head and asked, I heard that the news about the ability users in the Western continent has been blocked before, so what about now? Ordinary people over there, do you know about people with special abilities? Jason smiled, well, everyone knows. After the Western Continent Unification War, no matter if you are willing to believe it or not, you can only accept it in the end. Is that so? Actually, I am very grateful to His Majesty Li Anping. Jason said, if it weren't for him, a scum like me at the bottom of society would never know the existence of so-called superpowers. I would probably continue to fight in the underworld, either save some money and open a small shop in my hometown, or fall down in the boxing ring one day. After saying that, Jason gulped down the remaining beer and threw it on the ground. Yeah. I'm also very grateful to Your Majesty. Su Zheniying nodded, with a smile on her lips, I really like superpowers. While the two were talking, Su Zheniying's expression suddenly changed, pointing to a building in front of him and said, Brother Jason. Did you see it? There is a girl there. Huh, Jason also looked up at the roof of the opposite building, but there was nothing, I didn't see it, she left. She's there, Su Zheniying pointed to the roof and said, look, the one with black hair and white clothes, he suddenly reacted, I seem to have seen her somewhere. Jason shrugged, are you too nervous? I can't see anyone at all. Su Ziniang looked at the girl on the roof of the opposite building. The girl was standing on the edge of the roof, walking back and forth. Although Jason couldn't figure out why he couldn't see the girl, he still said, no, she seems to want to commit suicide, I have to stop her. Hey, are you hallucinating? I can't see anything. Jason turned his head and found that Su Ziniang had already rushed down the rooftop. This kid, wait. Could it be a person with special abilities? Jason looked up, but the edge of the rooftop of the building opposite was still empty. When Su Ziniang pushed open the iron door panting and rushed to the top of the building, he saw that the entire rooftop was empty. Did you leave? Just when Su Ziniang felt relieved, a cold female voice suddenly appeared behind him. Can you see me? Su Ziniang turned his head suddenly. Under the bright moonlight, a girl with long black hair, wearing a white robe and standing barefoot on the rooftop was looking at him coldly. The girl's face was too perfect to be human, like an elf under the moon, exuding a fascinating aura, and Su Ziniang was stunned. This girl was the birth of the mental network, and Li Anping shaped her body with the mental force field of tens of thousands of clones in Tianjing. A completely spiritual and immaterial existence. It is used to test the status of the mental network and is also an experimental subject used by Li Anping to study what the so-called consciousness is. It can be said that the beautiful girl in front of him, who is as beautiful as an elf, is the extension of Li Anping's consciousness. If people who are familiar with the Queen of Heaven see her, they will find that this girl is simply the Queen of Black Hair, the Daxia version of the Queen of Heaven. In fact, this is also Li Anping's deliberate shaping into this form to prevent the situation in front of him. After all, the mental network involves top secrets. Once someone like Su Ziniang sees him, he still maintains his original appearance, which is too easy to attract attention. Seeing Su Ziniang suddenly blushing shyly in front of him, Li Anping obviously did not notice how tempting his current appearance was. He just frowned and said in his usual cold voice, hey, are you deaf? No. No. I just. Having never spoken to such a beautiful girl, Su Ziniang said nervously, I just saw you here and was afraid that you wanted to jump off the building. At this moment, the iron door on the roof was knocked open again, and Jason rushed up with a baton in his hand. After seeing Su Ziniang, he shouted, hey, are you okay? I thought about it, what you just saw might be a person with special abilities. But Su Ziniang pointed at him stupidly, ghost, ghost. It turned out that Jason had just rushed out and passed through Li Anping's body directly. Don't be silly, I'm not a ghost. Li Anping frowned, ordinary people can't detect me, can't touch me, or even communicate with me. Only people with special abilities like you can see me. After Li Anping finished speaking, he glanced at Jason again, but this stupid guy is much better than you. Whether it's alertness or physical fitness. Su Ziniang closed her mouth, then suddenly reacted and shouted, wait a minute, you said I am a person with abilities. Jason on the side asked, what kind of ability user? Ziniang, who are you talking to? Li Anping frowned and lightly snapped his fingers with his white and tender right hand. The next moment, Jason's eyes were blank and he stood still on the spot. What did you do to brother Jason? Seeing this scene, Su Ziniang immediately stood in front of Jason and looked at Li Anping warily. Another childish guy. However, the ability is indeed somewhat special, and it is only at level 0. Li Anping looked at Su Ziniang in front of him and said coldly, he is fine and will recover in a minute. Are you here to take the entrance test for Academy City? Su Ziniang was surprised, how do you know? Of course Li Anping would not tell the other party that the moment he saw Su Ziniang, he had already exchanged information with the supercomputer in the Daxia Longke base using electromagnetic signals, and immediately found out all the information related to Su Ziniang. It can be said that in less than a second, Everything that happened to Su Zheniying from childhood to adulthood appeared in his mind exactly. Naive, childish, unrealistic. This is what Li Anping feels. In your current state, you will definitely not be able to enter Academy City. Li Anping did not give the other party a chance to refute, and then said coldly, I need some special ability users to do some tests. If you are willing to help me, I can teach you how to enter Academy City. Is it true? After Su Zheniying finished speaking, she immediately asked doubtfully, but what can you do? Also, what experiments are you going to do? Li Anping was too lazy to talk to Su Zheniying. The mental force field directly enveloped the other party. His tone was still cold, but to Su Zheniying's ears, it sounded extremely cordial and convincing. Anyway, you will go to the artificial lake in Central Park at 12 o'clock tomorrow night. Besides you, there will be 2 other people. Remember, don't be late. Su Zheniying nodded. Under the spiritual suggestion of the other party, he had no extra thoughts at all and felt that he should seize this opportunity. The next moment, Li Anping nodded and disappeared with the wind, and Jason beside him suddenly woke up. He looked at Su Zheniying in front of him, and continued the topic, how are you? Are you okay? It's okay, brother Jason, let's go down. Su Zheniying's mind is now filled with that beautiful girl who looks like an elf under the moon. In Daxia Longke's office, Bai Xing was facing the computer screen. Because he had been asleep for more than 2,000 years, he didn't know much about modernization at the beginning. However, as a level 5 ability user, he has strong learning ability. In less than 2 years, he has completed 10 or even 20 years of study for others. Even now, after becoming the leader of Daxia Longke, he still has not given up on learning. Especially scientific and computer knowledge has been of great help to him in his work and in the practice of various esoteric martial arts. 2,000 years ago, he learned all kinds of knowledge and acquired all the secret martial arts taught in the divine realm. Today, 2,000 years later, he is still learning, constantly improving himself and his abilities with modern knowledge. If you sail against the current, you will retreat if you don't advance. This is his belief. He looked down upon Emma's lifestyle of just hanging around all day and being too lazy to study and practice. At this moment, a staff member knocked on the door outside. Come in. My lord, this is a letter for you. Letter? Bai Xing took the letter in confusion, and he couldn't figure out who else would send him a letter in this era. After opening the letter and reading it for just a few seconds, a red flame rose from Bai Xing's palm. There was surprise, joy, and hesitation in his eyes. But in the end, a tall figure of a man in white robes appeared in his eyes. Thinking of the man's incomparable power, a touch of fear was introduced into his heart, mixed with consternation, joy, and hesitation. Bai Xing's mood has never been so complicated in his life. He raised his head and looked at the staff in front of him, his eyes as cold as blades. Where did this letter come from? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 379. On the same night, Li Anping moved to the roof of another building, still looking down at the entire Tianjing city night in the spiritual form of a woman with long hair and white clothes. The doctor has already begun to deploy a global spiritual network, but because it is impossible to use all the manpower to do this kind of thing, according to Li Anping's calculations, it will probably take more than half a year. So although Tianjing's spiritual network has been deployed now, Li Anping usually only uses it to test some problems and has not fully opened it. Even the spiritual network in Zhongdu has been adjusted to a very low value. He planned to wait until the spiritual network covered the whole world before launching it together, so that no one would have a chance to react. But now, the spiritual network plays a greater role for him in other aspects. Collecting more data requires more experiments and more tests. Soul, spirit, consciousness, what exactly are they? The 12th nightmare test begins. That night, 8 more people in Tianjin City fell into a terrible hell. When Zhao Wei woke up, what he saw was no longer his bedroom. There was a wooden floor under his body, and the top of his head looked like the beams of some kind of cabin. When Zhao Wei held his head and stood up unsteadily, he found that he was standing in a cabin. There is a wolf head specimen hanging on the wall, and there is a fireplace facing Zhao Wei. The entire cabin is made of wood. Through the window, you can see the dark woods outside. From the outside, it looks like a federal-style hunting lodge. In the entire room, besides him, there were 9 other men and women, 5 of whom, like him, were slowly getting up from the floor, while there were 3 other adult men standing aside, looking at them with a cold gaze. Zhao Wei looked at them and asked uneasily, "Hello. Where is this place? I remember that I was in my bedroom before I fell asleep." Among the 3 men, one was the youngest and looked very thin. A boy who was probably just a high school student stood up and said to Zhao Wei and the other 5 men and women, "Everyone. The information from the nightmare space has been injected into it. If you think about it carefully, you should know it." Zhao Wei began to think carefully after listening to his words. In an instant, an inexplicable piece of information appeared in his mind. Nightmare space, a real space. After being pulled in, I will enter here every Sunday night. And the only thing you have to do is to survive here. As long as you can survive, wealth, power, you can get anything in this world. Zhao Wei has not yet realized the meaning of this message. A middle-aged woman among the remaining 5 people had already started arguing. "What are you doing?" she shouted. "Where are you? I have to go to work tomorrow morning. Why did you tie me here?" The young man among the 3 sneered, "The gate is right there. If you want to leave, please feel free to leave." The middle-aged woman glanced at the 3 of them suspiciously, then walked straight to the door and left. After seeing her leaving like this, 2 office-aged people, a man and a woman, also left. The only ones left in the room were Zhao Wei, a middle-aged man in a suit, and a barefoot girl with black hair and white clothes. When I saw the girl's face, Zhao Wei couldn't help but be stunned, because the other party was very beautiful, at least much more beautiful than the celebrities he saw on TV. 163. When he saw all 3 middle-aged women leaving, Zhao Wei glanced at the girl suspiciously. The girl seemed to have read a number just now. Seeing the 3 people leaving, the young man who looked like a high school student sneered several times and said to Zhao Wei and the others, "Okay. Those 3 idiots have left. Since you choose to stay, it means you are not stupid. I'll give you 5 minutes to ask questions." At this time, Zhao Wei had time to carefully look at these 3 people who were obviously different from them. Except that the leader was a young man who looked like a high school student. The other 2 were a muscular man wearing a black vest and shaved hedgehog hair. There is also a young man wearing glasses, slightly long hair, and wearing sportswear. When he saw this, Zhao Wei suddenly reacted, lowered his head and saw the clothes on his body. He clearly remembered that he was sleeping in bed, but now, he had changed into a set of shirts and trousers that he usually wore to work. Just when he was surprised, the middle-aged man in a suit on the side had already started asking questions. "Where is this place? Who are you? Why do I appear here?" His eyes were full of wariness and questions, and he was obviously he didn't believe in the nightmare space thing, but out of some considerations, he didn't rush out with the middle-aged woman. The gentleman with glasses replied, "We don't know where this is. Every nightmare will enter a different world. There is basically no chance. As for us, we have just experienced a few more worlds than you." The high school student on the other side continued, "My name is Lin Ke, the one wearing glasses is Miao Ji, and the muscular man is Qin Shuang." Ever since you entered the nightmare space, you will come in once a week and experience a world. These worlds may its myths and legends, novels, games, animations, movies, all of them are very dangerous, and you might die if you are not careful. Dead, the middle-aged man asked in surprise, you mean we might die? What do you think? Link, who looked like a high school student, said disdainfully, so far, I have confirmed that 30 people have died in the nightmare space. Do you think this is an amusement park? Doing this every week? Is this a dream over? The middle-aged man frowned and said, but isn't this a nightmare? It's called nightmare space, and will we go back when we wake up? Yes, when we wake up, we will return to the original world. It feels like a dream. Miao Ji pressed his eyes and sneered at the middle-aged man, but if you think this is just a dream, then try committing suicide. Let me tell you in advance, in the 3 worlds I experienced before, I wrote down the faces and names of the 15 dead people, and investigated them after I went back. They all died that day from various accidents and illnesses. What Miao Ji doesn't know here is that although Li Anping has mastered the electromagnetic force, strong interaction force, and weak interaction force, he can already simulate most phenomena in nature, and can also display their various changes in the nightmare space. In their own flesh. But he didn't actually kill the dead, he just erased their memories in the nightmare space. Then the memories of survivors such as Lin Ke were modified, and the faces and names of the deceased were changed to those who died in Tianjing that day. The middle-aged man was shocked when he heard this, and then asked, you mean if we die here, we will die in an accident outside? Who knows, muscular man Qin Zhuang said, I only know that everything that happens here will affect our physical bodies in reality. The strength I have developed here can also be used in reality. You think of this place as that's a real world. Zhao Wei also asked, then how do we go back? Will we have to experience the nightmare space every week in the future? I don't know. Miao Ji smiled bitterly, at least so far, we haven't been able to find any way to completely escape from this space. Could it be some kind of ability? Zhao Wei suddenly shouted, have you tried reporting what happened here to the government? If the emperor knew. Do you think we haven't tried such a simple thing? Lin Ke said angrily, we can't do it at all. After leaving the nightmare space, we can't tell a word about any information about this place, and even we can't say a word about it. No one can exchange information about this place. Miao Ji clapped his hands, okay, let's end the problem here. He looked at Zhao Wei, who looked nervous, and the middle-aged man who was still wary, as well as the middle-aged man who had been silent since he appeared. A barefoot girl with a cold expression. When he saw the girl's appearance, a trace of regret flashed in his eyes. Based on his experience, girls like this are often the ones who are most likely to die. Now tell me your names and professions. If we want to survive, we must stick together. Cooperate with each other. Zhao Wei nodded, my name is Zhao Wei, I do interface design. Qian Lin, a businessman. Miao Ji looked at the silent girl and asked, what about you? What's your name? The 5 men present looked at the girl together. No matter who they were, there was a hint of surprise in their eyes when looking at the girl. I was also looking forward to what the girl's voice would sound like. The girl said in a cold tone, hey, you can call me Hey. At this moment, a series of shrill screams suddenly rang out from the woods outside the house. It's the 3 guys who went out just now. Then he saw the middle-aged woman who had just rushed out running in with her face covered in blood, then closed the door and pressed her body tightly against the back of the door. She shouted like crazy, zombie, zombie. As a result, there was a loud sound, and a sickle was pierced directly from behind the door, piercing her chest. 123. Lin Ke seemed to hear it more clearly this time. He turned his head and looked at the girl who called herself Hey. The girl seemed to have reported another number just now. Lin Ke and others on the other side had already taken action immediately. There's something out there. Block the door. Seeing this, the middle-aged man's expression changed and he ran towards the other side of the hut. As a result, before he could run a few steps, a female zombie, covered in rot and holding an axe in her hand, rushed out of the shadows and hit her in the head with an axe. The next moment, several more zombies rushed in from the window and the back door. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 380. On the other side, Qin Zhuang was thrown to the ground by a zombie. He struggled frantically, but he couldn't get rid of the zombie. 92. Then came Lin Ke and Miaoji. A zombie over 2 meters tall with a chain and a sickle in his hand opened the door and dragged the two out. 45. 62. Zhao Wei watched the bloody scene in front of him helplessly, and the fear that penetrated his bones made him unable to move. Only the girl next to him reported 3 numbers with unknown meanings in sequence. The next moment, Zhao Wei was completely overwhelmed by the swarm of zombies. Before he died, he could only see the girl looking at him coldly, with no change in expression on her beautiful face, just like it's like looking at a guinea pig. 12. The next second, Zhao Wei opened his eyes again. There was a wooden floor under his body, and the top of his head looked like the beams of some kind of cabin. When Zhao Wei held his head and stood up unsteadily, he found that he was standing in a cabin, and the scene in the previous scene memory has been erased. It's still a similar plot, but the difference is that the barefoot girl just now is no longer among these people. This time, there are only 8 of them. Li Enping, who transformed into a barefoot girl, calmly watched the various performances of the 8 people in the wooden house, and recorded the various choices and endings they made. Hundreds of experiences, but the choices each person makes at each moment are limited. As the number of times gradually increases, the probability of each choice they make appears. What makes the choice? The brain? The brain is just a bunch of atoms. It is also composed of various atoms. What is the difference between it and stones and clods of soil? Breaking down the atoms of a stone and replacing the atoms of a brain doesn't make any difference. So how did our brains give birth to something like consciousness? In front of Li Enping, there were countless TV screens flashing, every one of them. They are all different kinds of people who have experienced in the nightmare space. They are either being surrounded by zombies, surviving in the wilderness, or fighting monsters in space. Different people, different environments. But everyone makes their own choices according to certain rules. Every time the plot is repeated, the data they selected will be summarized to Li Enping. As thousands of people continue to reincarnate, their data soon exceeds 200 gigabytes and more and more. Likewise, as the number of times increases, the probability of each option they choose becomes more and more obvious. What is consciousness? Brain activity? But most people can't feel their own brain activity at all. When he wanted to get up, he bent down, put his hands up and got out of bed. When a person wants to eat, his hand puts the spoon into his mouth, and the food enters the stomach. It begins to be digested. Exercise, digestion, sleep, we don't need to specifically direct our body at all, it is done subconsciously. Ordinary people have no idea how the brain works. Just like the functions of a computer, humans just input and output. Modern science believes that consciousness is a combination of patterns. Just like the music score itself is not the music, the information recorded on the music score is the music. The pages and words are not the novel, the content recorded on the paper is. And consciousness. It is a combination pattern of atoms, which constitutes an extremely complex algorithm. When we input content into it, it will automatically output the results, and ordinary people cannot control the process. On the 13th floor of the Imperial Library, Li Enping's hands were illuminated by dense blue electric light, and he saw masses of air constantly changing in his hands, gradually multiplying from one cell to the next. slowly turned into a huge meatball. Just like basic words, when different words are combined with each other, a novel is born. When atoms are combined in a special way, will consciousness be born? But everyone's consciousness is still different. Everyone's consciousness is like a unique function in Li Anping's eyes. It's like thousands of people have emerged, reincarnating in the nightmare space and making choices. Different inputs lead to different results, but each function is unique. Even if two functions have the same input, they may produce different results. But this set of algorithms is so complex that even if a person's entire life is input into a supercomputer, it is difficult to predict 100% what he will do in the next second. No, it's impossible to predict. Human beings themselves are composed of atoms that are unpredictable, but they only have a certain probability on a macro scale. More than that, human consciousness is more advanced than ordinary functions. I saw the electric light in Li Anping's hand getting stronger and stronger. In the patches of blue lightning, a palm-sized cat slowly opened its eyes. Human consciousness has the ability to self-correct. Every choice and every behavior will modify human consciousness, just like writing a function, except that humans do not write on the source code, but through the encoding of behavior and environment. Tools to write, more intelligent and macroscopic. So everyone's consciousness is changing every moment. With the same input, the answer 10 years ago was 30% likely to choose A and 70% likely to choose B. 10 years later, the answer becomes 90% choose C and 10% choose D. I saw the electric light in Li Anping's hand slowly dissipating, and the cat with gray and white fur looked at him and called softly, "Meow." The kitten looked no different from ordinary cats, just as cute and cute. Smart. The animal's consciousness algorithm is too simple, it's like creating a simple artificial intelligence. Li Anping looked at the cat in front of him and put it on the ground casually. It's difficult for me to predict with 100% accuracy what it will do next second, but I know all its possible options. Because of its consciousness algorithm, its functions were compiled by me. But it's not complex enough. There are too many differences from humans. Self-correction cannot be written in the combination mode yet. Is it a shortcoming of the algorithm, or? The kitten ran to Li Anping's feet, rubbed its body against him, and then meowed several times. There's still a little something left. What else is missing? Li Anping raised his head, his eyes penetrated directly through the roof of the Imperial Library and looked at the endless starry sky. In Tianjing, thousands of people are constantly experiencing all kinds of incredible adventures. The choices, data, life, and death of countless people appeared in Li Anping's eyes. What exactly is missing? While Li Anping was still working on perfecting the second stage of material reorganization and preparing to hit the third stage of quantum computing. The distant Code Country, in the Death Zone. It was originally ravaged by human monsters all year round, and later ravaged by Li Anping's battles with Seagram and Gabe. Now it is almost a complete no man's land. It was only after the unification war of the Western continent that the Codex Country slowly began the repair work. However, the vitality of the Codex Country was severely damaged in the Battle of Seagram. Therefore, the reconstruction work of the Death Zone is also arranged very late. But deep in the uninhabited underground, countless densely packed metal bugs are constantly digging and constructing. In a hall made entirely of metal, Shang Tian was sitting on a chair. There was a laptop on the table in front of him. Shang Tian, who was over 2 years old, kept playing with his little hands and typing on the keyboard. Behind him, Ye Beast walked up slowly. "Xiao Tian, the letter has been delivered." "Thank you, Uncle Ye." Shang Tian turned his head and smiled at Ye Beast, and then started typing on the keyboard the next moment. And Night Beast stood behind him, guarding him silently. In less than 2 months, the little boy in front of him, who was obviously only less than 2 years old, burst out with amazing wisdom and talent. If Shang Tian was just a genius before, what he did in the past 2 months has made people feel horrified, and even Ye Beast, a 5th level ability user, was convinced. On the other side of the table was a short-haired young man wearing national costume. He raised his feet and put them on the table, and his clothes made a series of jingling sounds. How long do you have to wait? You have contacted such a bunch of trash in the past 2 months. Except for those robots, everyone else is just a bunch of trash. Be patient. Kudia Shangtian took a sip of the coffee on the table and showed a confident smile. The underwater base in Frozen Ocean has begun to be established, and the opportunity will come soon. What are you waiting for? The young man known as Kudia looked at Shangtian in confusion. If Li Anping is really making great strides towards the ultimate goal as you said, we don't have time to stay here. Let's have tea and chat here. But on Earth, I have done everything I can do now. Next, we need to wait for a friend. Friend? Yes, friend. Shangtian showed a mysterious smile. When I see him on the news, we can set off. Go to World 1, where we will kill Li Anping. When he said this, Shangtian's eyes were filled with resentment, and the murderous aura that did not match his 2-year-old body came out, making Kudia feel horrified. The resentment contained in it was so profound that he was shocked. How much hatred does this guy have against Li Anping? After a long time, the boiling murderous intent in Shangtian's eyes gradually calmed down and turned into a bone-chilling coldness. It's up to me to completely stop this disaster in the multiverse and end the sin in our family.